Northwestern Oregon. This is NBC 16 News at 5:30.
We are taking a live look right now at Atlanta, Georgia, where protesters are outraged after the killing of George Floyd. Protests also continue for the fourth straight day in Minneapolis over that death, an unarmed black man who died while in police custody. Good evening and thanks for joining us for NBC 16 at 5:30. I'm Alan Matthews. Former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin was taken into custody earlier today. Chauvin is charged with third-degree murder and manslaughter. He was the officer seen kneeling on George Floyd's neck. The county attorney says there was enough evidence to prove the charges beyond a reasonable doubt. A criminal complaint is pending. Authorities have not yet arrested or charged the other three officers involved, but are still investigating. A reporter with CNN covering the protest in Minneapolis was arrested by Minnesota State Patrol despite having press credentials and being live on TV.
Okay. Do you mind telling me why I'm under arrest, sir? Why am I under arrest, sir?
Officer's with CNN and he's on the air right now. On the air with CNN. You are arresting him live on CNN. We told you before that we are with CNN.
CNN correspondent Omar Jimenez and his producer and photographer were all arrested during the live report. Jimenez says he offered to move if he was standing in the wrong area, but he was arrested anyway. Minnesota State Patrol tweeted this in response. In the course of clearing the streets and restoring order, 4 people were arrested by State Patrol troopers, including 3 members of CNN. All 3 were released once they were confirmed to be members of the media. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz apologized to the president of CNN this morning. He said the arrest was unacceptable. Jimenez and the crew were released after about an hour in custody. In Eugene, a march is expected to take place at the federal courthouse building this Sunday at 1 p.m. to protest a series of police brutality incidents against unarmed African Americans. The march will start at the courthouse and end at Alton Baker Park, where there will be speeches starting around 2 p.m. Organizers hope this will serve as a reminder to bring awareness of these unlawful acts from police and fight for the lives of African Americans. Organizers encourage people who plan to attend to wear masks and follow social distancing. Our team will be covering the protest. Make sure to tune in NBC 16 News at 6:30 and 11. 2 ATV accidents at the Oregon Dunes National Recreation Area in North Bend happened just 3 days apart. Last Saturday, 2 people from California were in an ATV when the driver lost control while going over a hill at a high speed. The ATV flipped several times. The passenger, who was not wearing a seatbelt, was pronounced dead at the scene. Then on Wednesday, in another part of the dunes, 2 other people were were in an ATV that crashed into a hill. They were taken to Bay Area Hospital and have since been released. The driver was cited by sheriff's deputies on charges including driving under the influence.
We keep trying to reiterate is drive safely, follow the laws. They're there to help keep not only the people recreating, but everybody else around them safe.
He says factors in accidents like these are speed and knowledge of the terrain. Fabrizio suggested if you are going to go over a dune quickly, you should have a spotter at the top of the hill.
There's laws there that, if followed, would help at least mitigate the danger. And then the protective equipment, your seatbelts, your helmets, your flag that you have to have, all the different rules and laws are there simply to help protect people.
Fabrizio says day use areas are open to visitors, and for now, camping is only allowed for people who live in the local area. Oregon State University has been doing trace testing in Corvallis and is now expanding to Bend this weekend. Trace testing is used to gauge how prevalent coronavirus is in a community using door-to-door sampling. The move to Bend comes amid a spike in cases in Deschutes County. NBC 16's Kelsey Christensen spoke with one of the experts to find out how this data will be used and what it could mean.
Jeff Bethel is one of the lead investigators for the Oregon State University Trace Testing Team. They've been going door to door in random neighborhoods in Corvallis to test for the novel coronavirus.
We knock on the doors and then step back, adhering to social distancing, and explain who we are, what we're doing, and invite them to participate.
The team visited nearly 350 households with about 80% participation. Over a span of 3 weekends, the Trace team found 1 to 2 people for every of 1,000 had COVID-19. This may be a low number, but Bethel says it doesn't mean there isn't risk.
I mean, in a town of 60,000 people, I mean, it shows that it's out there, and those people could in turn unknowingly be a part of the transmission cycle.
Bethel says the data acts as a thermometer for county health departments, expanding testing capabilities for a better gauge.
And that knowledge will help them know the magnitude of coronavirus in their community.
Now the team is headed to Bend for more trace testing amid a spike in the area after starting phase 1 of reopening. They'll be sampling neighborhoods just as they did in Corvallis.
After we've been reopened for a while, we don't have a reopening estimate of prevalence, but I think nevertheless, I think this baseline will be really important to them to help them make decisions on how to control the epidemic, at least locally in Bend.
Reporting in Corvallis, I'm Kelsey Christensen.
To recap, coronavirus numbers statewide, Oregon has surpassed the 4,100 mark in coronavirus cases. Despite those numbers, no new deaths were reported. Deaths in Oregon stand at 151. Now, most of those cases remain in the northern portion of the state. In Multnomah, Marion, and Washington counties, there are more than 2,700 cases there. In our region, Benton County remains at 55. Lynn County has 115. Lane County did add 1 case, now standing at 68, including 1 suspected death. 3 cases are active. Deschutes County has 121 cases. Douglas County added a case. They now have 27, and Coos County has 31 cases. Researchers at the University of Washington have new projections on how many people will lose their lives to coronavirus. According to the Institute for Health and Metrics Evaluation, 132,000 people will die in the U.S. by early August. That's another 30,000 people in the next 2 months. While it's shocking, it's actually 11,000 deaths fewer than they first thought. UW Dr. Chris Murray credits the use of masks to lowering the projection.
There's new data now coming in on how people are behaving, in terms of avoiding contact on their own, as well as wearing masks.
Locally, another 46 Oregonians are expected to die by early August. Another 70 people in Washington are expected to lose their lives.
But it was definitely another toasty day across western Oregon. Not as warm as what we experienced yesterday, but still managing to make it up into the 80s through the valleys, into the 60s out along the coast, and a look out over the Coburg Hills from earlier on this Friday. Cloud coverage kind of put a squash on some of those temperatures from warming up to their potential. And you can see the clouds moving from the south to the north, something that we'll continue to see for the rest of tonight. Fire danger still remains at moderate levels for Lane County, but likely actually going to be falling back as heavy rain moves back into our area late tonight into tomorrow. Grass pollen count remains at extreme levels, trees at moderate, but maybe a quick moving shower or 2 later tonight. But the brunt of the rainfall, it returns tomorrow with much cooler conditions. I'll have that timeline and the severe weather potential in just a few.
All right, thanks a lot, Josh. After 42 years in North Bend, Bailey's Health Food Store will close its doors in June. The going out of business signs were posted after the owners say business has declined for the past 2 years. They say larger grocers began selling organic products and supplements. With the arrival of Natural Grocers, a national chain, and the coronavirus, the owners of Bailey's say that their customer base dropped to more than half.
In the 15 years that we've been here, we haven't seen the population grow. As a result of the coronavirus, a lot of people who are uncomfortable working with computers and that sort of thing have gotten more comfortable. They had to stay home. A lot of the market going toward the online. Brick and mortar stores are just going to have a harder and harder time, and I think you're just going to see that.
As they prepare to close over the next few weeks, the owners say they plan to retire. Right now, children are learning from home because of the coronavirus pandemic. Oregon State University researchers recently surveyed nearly 500 parents and found that children haven't been as active as usual during the stay-at-home orders. Experts say when those kids get back to school, recess should be a priority for their health. NBC 16's Angelina Dixon reports.
OSU researchers are studying the importance of recess for whenever schools reopen. And even with the safety precautions of preventing the spread of COVID-19, researchers say kids just need their exercise. As K-12 schools look ahead to students returning, researchers are also advocating the need for an upkeep for sanitation and safety precautions to prevent the spread of COVID-19 inside and out of the classroom. William Massey, one of the researchers at OSU, have joined colleagues all around the world to represent the Global Recess Alliance. The group has published articles and papers on the policies of recess and its benefits.
And physical activity is important for kids in their overall development. We know it's important not just for their physical health, but also for their social and emotional well-being. It helps prime their brain for learning. And so, as we consider that kids have been cooped up, they've been isolated, certainly there's a lot of struggle going on there.
But while being at home, Massey says educators must be flexible in their expectations of student behavior, considering that some students may have been isolated in abusive or unsafe households and could return to school with trauma and anxiety.
There's probably a lot of concerns across the board in schools. And so, we know that educators and policymakers are doing everything they can to try to adjust in real time to this pandemic. There's a lot of different plans going around in terms of staggered schedules or possible blended learning where some of it's distant and some of it is in person.
And again, along with proper sanitation, Massey says data suggests that being outdoors is much less risky than being indoors. In Corvallis, I'm Angelina Dixon reporting.
Massey says as schools look forward to students returning to campus, not a lot has been discussed on what will happen at recess or if playgrounds will be open.
As a former officer is charged in the death of George Floyd, we take a look at a controversial police restraint technique and why so many departments discourage it, and the modern office makeover in the age of COVID when we see you back here tonight.